The marble fountain was gently bubbling as I pulled into what was supposed to be my empty lot. But instead of trees and a quiet forest, there it stood. A gleaming new mansion with a circular driveway, a 6-car garage, and an ornate entrance like something straight out of a luxury magazine. Right in the center of my legally recorded 15-acre plot, the land I had owned for a decade. A woman in pristine tennis whites sauntered out, smoothie in one hand, phone in the other, waving at me like I was there to clean her pool. Her blonde hair was tied in a sleek ponytail, and the oversized sunglasses she wore probably cost more than some people's entire mortgage. "Excuse me, you're trespassing," she sang out in a sugary sing-song voice, the kind that usually belongs to someone who's never heard the word no. "This is private HOA property now." I leaned across the seat, opened my glove compartment, and pulled out the laminated copy of my deed. Something I'd kept handy ever since I started handling property disputes in my career as a real estate attorney. "No," I said evenly, holding the document up between us. "You built a 9,000-square-foot house on my land." She actually laughed, loud, bright, condescending. The kind of laugh that makes you instinctively check if there's something stuck between your teeth. "Oh, sweetie," she purred, lowering her sunglasses to give me a perfect view of her meticulously made-up eyes. "This is HOA land. It's been that way for years. I'm Patricia Peaton, president of the Riverside Estates HOA. I personally approved this development. Unfortunately for her, I wasn't just the landowner. I was also the attorney who'd spent years fighting and winning cases exactly like this, and she had just made the biggest mistake of her entitled life. My name is Daniel Morrison. I bought my wooded property outside Riverside Valley 8 years ago. It was peaceful, remote, and most importantly, completely outside city limits and any HOA jurisdiction. I'd had the land surveyed twice, officially recorded everything with the county, and the boundaries were locked down beyond question. 15 acres of untouched forest with a small creek winding through it. I visited a few times each year, usually in the fall when the trees exploded in red and gold. My dream had always been to build a modest cabin there one day, maybe for retirement, a quiet place to escape the noise of my law practice and the city. But over the years, Riverside Valley grew. Developments popped up like mushrooms after rain, and with them came the Riverside Estates HOA. And leading, the charge was Patricia Peaton, a woman who treated the neighborhood like her own personal kingdom. Patricia was infamous in the area for her ruthless enforcement of community standards. She once fined a neighbor $500 for having uneven shutters. Another time, she went after an elderly couple for planting a vegetable garden that, according to her, didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. She literally carried a ruler to measure lawn height and sent out violation notices if the grass was a quarter-inch too tall. So when her son-in-law, a slick real estate developer named Bradley Harrison, came to her with an idea for an exclusive luxury estate project, she didn't hesitate to set her eyes on the perfect spot: my land. The fact that it wasn't hers didn't seem to bother her. Patricia insisted my property was community spillover based on a so-called 1994 HOA expansion map. When I eventually saw this map during discovery, it looked like someone had drawn it in Microsoft Paint. The lines didn't line up with any actual survey markers, and somehow my parcel had magically appeared inside their boundaries. She didn't check public records. She didn't consult a lawyer. She didn't even attempt to contact me. She just greenlit Bradley's entire development plan and used her position as HOA president to fast-track approvals through their architectural committee, which was basically just her best friend Margaret, and Margaret's husband, who never bothered to attend meetings. I was in Colorado, busy with a case when the bulldozers rolled in. My neighbor, an older man named Earl who lived on the adjacent property, tried to call me, but I was in court, and by the time I got his voicemails, they had already cleared 3 acres of my trees, old trees that had been standing for 100 years. I caught the first flight back and drove straight to the property. What I saw left me speechless. They weren't just building a house. They were erecting a monument to pure excess. Imported Italian marble columns, a 1,000-bottle wine cellar, Brazilian hardwood floors, A butterfly-shaped swimming pool. No county permits. No zoning variances. No environmental studies. Nothing. And somehow, they'd even gotten the utilities hooked up. Plumbing installed, power lines strung, and at the end of the driveway, a shiny, gold-lettered mailbox that read, "The Pitons." I drove straight to the HOA office, a converted dentist's building. And of course, Patricia was there, perched behind a desk stacked high with violation notices like some suburban queen on her throne. "Mr. Morrison," she said coolly without looking up. "I heard you were back in town. I trust you've seen the improvements we made to that abandoned lot." "My lot," I corrected sharply, setting my deed down on her desk. "The one you've illegally developed without permission." She glanced at the deed like it was the back of a receipt from a grocery store. "We're asserting historical community rights based on the continuous use and improvement doctrine," she replied. Legal words rolling off her tongue like she'd just Googled them that morning, which was HOA speak for, "We're squatting with style." "Patricia," I said, dropping my voice into the same steady tone I used in the courtroom, and that was when the real fight began. "You've built on private property without permission," I said evenly. "That's trespassing, theft, and about 6 other crimes I can list off the top of my head." Patricia leaned back in her chair like she was lounging at a spa instead of committing real estate fraud, and flashed a smug little smile. "Prove it in court, then," she purred. "In the meantime, security will escort you off the HOA property." That was her second biggest mistake. I immediately retained my former law partner, Sarah Chen, one of the sharpest property attorneys in the entire state. Within 48 hours, we had pulled every single record from the county clerk's office. And there it was, in black and white. I was still the sole legal owner of the entire 15-acre parcel. No sale, no transfer, no easement, no lien, nothing. When we showed the file to Frank Rodriguez, the county's building inspector who'd been doing this job for 3 decades, his face went pale. Patricia hadn't filed a single legitimate permit. Instead, she'd handed in a stack of internal HOA forms with a fancy letterhead, pretending they carried actual legal weight. She'd classified the mansion construction as a community beautification project that supposedly didn't require county oversight. Even worse, she'd used HOA funds to bankroll the whole thing, hiding the expense under green beautification and community enhancement in their budget. $75,000 supposedly for landscaping, but in reality, it paid for her personal paradise, a mansion with an elaborate garden, marble fountain, and imported plants. I wasted no time. I filed a formal cease and desist order. Patricia responded by doubling down, having private security guards block off the driveway to my own land. They planted traffic cones, set up barricades, and put up a sign that read, "Private HOA use only. Violators will be prosecuted." That was her third and final mistake. I called the sheriff's department. Within an hour, Deputy Martinez arrived. He took one look at my deed, then at the guards, and sighed like a man who's seen this kind of stupidity before. "Ma'am," he said to the lead guard, "you're going to need to remove these cones and let this man onto his property." "But Patricia Peaton said," the guard began. "I don't care what Patricia Peaton said," Martinez cut him off sharply. "This is his land. Move the cones or I'll arrest you for obstruction." The cones vanished in seconds. I walked up the newly paved driveway with Deputy Martinez at my side, along with a process server carrying a thick envelope. We found Patricia lounging on the faux French patio, sipping champagne with her son-in-law Bradley, like they were celebrating their conquest. "Patricia Peaton?" the process server asked. "Yes," she replied, irritation dripping from every syllable. "You've been served." The moment she opened that summons, the mask cracked. For the first time, Patricia's carefully controlled, smug composure faltered. Panic flashed across her face. In court, my case was airtight. Judge Thompson, a no-nonsense veteran of 20 years on the bench, reviewed the evidence with growing disbelief. My deed predated the HOA by 14 years. The property had never, at any point, been part of any HOA territory. Patricia's historical map was revealed to be the sloppy, fabricated nonsense it was. Mrs. Peaton, Judge Thompson said, peering over her glasses. "Did you at any point verify the actual property records with the county?" Patricia's lawyer, a nervous young man sweating through his suit, stammered something about executive interpretation of community boundaries. "That's not what I asked," the judge snapped. "Did you check the property records?" Patricia straightened her back like a queen refusing to kneel. "I have executive authority as HOA president to make development decisions in the community's best interest." The judge is unimpressed. Expression said it all. She granted me a full injunction and ordered an independent appraisal for damages. She also stated in clear terms that the district attorney would be well within their rights to pursue criminal charges, but that was only the beginning. I also filed a civil lawsuit against the HOA itself for trespassing, unlawful development, and illegal land conversion. And Sarah, being the tactical genius she was, made sure every single HOA member received notice that their dues had paid for Patricia's personal mansion. The revolt was immediate. An emergency HOA meeting was called at the community center, and the turnout was standing room only. The air crackled with tension. Margaret, Patricia's longtime ally, was the first to break. "I had no idea she was using our funds for a personal mansion," she said, wringing her hands. "She told me it was for community improvement." Then the floodgates opened. Neighbor after neighbor stood up to air their grievances, the $500 fine over uneven shutters, the infamous vegetable garden debacle, the petty citation for the wrong shade of beige on a garage door. "I move for a vote of no confidence in our current president," said Dr. Peterson, a soft-spoken man who'd been fined 3 times for a mailbox 2 inches too tall. The vote was unanimous. Patricia was removed from her throne in disgrace, escorted out of the community center as she ranted about ungrateful peasants and architectural integrity. 2 months later, the civil judgment came down. $2.3 million in damages, plus full ownership rights to the structure on my land. Patricia's personal assets were frozen. The HOA's insurance company refused to cover criminal acts, which meant, in the end, I owned the 9,000-square-foot house Patricia had built for herself. To celebrate, I hosted what I called the Reclamation Barbecue on the marble patio. Every neighbor in Riverside Estates showed up. We grilled burgers and hot dogs, kids splashed in the butterfly-shaped pool, and laughter filled the air, the kind of warmth Patricia's iron-fisted rule had never allowed. At one point, Patricia drove by in her modest new Prius, her luxury cars long since sold to cover legal fees. She rolled down the window and shouted, "This isn't over! I'll sue you for everything." Deputy Martinez, off-duty with a burger in hand, strolled up to her car. "Ma'am," he said casually, "you just rolled through that stop sign. License and registration, please. The ticket was $250. I heard later she tried to fight it and lost. I turned the extravagant wine cellar into a woodworking shop. The marble fountain was replaced with a koi pond I cheekily named Patricia's Folly. The butterfly pool remains, for now, though I'm considering reshaping it into something a little less pretentious. I now spend part of the year living in the mansion Patricia built with other people's money on my land. The irony isn't lost on anyone, especially during the monthly neighborhood barbecues, where laughter and music echo through the same space she once tried to claim as her personal empire. When the criminal trial finally came, it was even worse for her. Prosecutors revealed that Patricia had pulled off similar schemes twice before in other states, though never at this scale. They laid out a 15-year pattern of fraud and embezzlement. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, embezzlement, criminal trespass, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison and ordered $3.7 million in restitution. As the bailiff clicked the handcuffs around her wrists, Patricia's perfect facade shattered completely. 8 years, she shrieked, her voice cracking. "But I'm the HOA!" "No, Patricia, not anymore.